What is going on, everyone? James Hancock here. This video is going to be an absolute pleasure to record because it is my privilege, it is my honor, it is my duty to report that David Lynch is back in action. I was very cautious and curious and concerned. I had all these mixed emotions when I heard he was going to be returning to the world of Twin Peaks. But tonight's double episode premiere was not remotely what I expected because I didn't really have any expectations. But man, I was fascinated, I was horrified, I was aroused, I was curious. Maybe perhaps it was a little more evil and grim and sinister than the Twin Peaks we know and love from the early 90s. But I have to say, the idea of an entire summer where every Sunday night I get to look forward to David Lynch doing more of that. God damn, it's going to be like the best summer I've ever fucking had. Before I get started, I should be clear. I am not a Twin Peaks encyclopedia. There are a lot of people out there who just really know the world of Twin Peaks backwards and forwards. They know all the characters, all the little details, all the little nuggets and Easter eggs. I love Twin Peaks. I saw season 1 twice. I saw season 2 once. And I've seen Fire Walk with Me probably 3 times, I think, or 4 times. At any rate, that's a very, very casual fan when it comes to Twin Peaks because there are some people who for the last 25 years have been living Twin Peaks. They write magazines, they do podcasts, they go to conventions, they have Twin Peaks parties. It's their world that they live in and that they continue to celebrate. And more power to them, but I won't claim to have that level of expertise. But what I will claim to have is a very good working knowledge of the films of David Lynch. In the late 90s, I got really into his stuff. Movies like Blue Velvet and Lost Highway, and then later Mulholland Drive, I think were some of the most interesting films in his career. But obviously, Wild at Heart is fucking killer as well, and Eraserhead, Elephant Man, even parts of Dune, which was my first exposure to David Lynch as a little kid. So yeah, I am a David Lynch fan, and I really love his stuff. But I was really disappointed by Inland Empire. I know there are a lot of people who are defenders of Inland Empire, and people whose opinion that I trust and admire who really respect the movie and really enjoy it. But for me, it was my least favorite David Lynch movie. And so basically, not since Mulholland Drive, which I think was 2000 or 2001, have I had a really satisfying David Lynch experience. And I know he's obviously stayed busy. He does tons of photography, and he does tons of painting, and he does music. He's a prolific artist, and he's never stopped creating. But just as a fan of his films, I've been dying to see those beautiful, nightmarish images. And if you're going to describe David Lynch at his best, I think it's a line from Blue Velvet where essentially it is the most beautiful dream and most horrible nightmare all at once. And tonight's debut double feature of 2 episodes, I don't know if we got a lot of beautiful dream, but we certainly got a lot of horrible nightmare and a lot of interesting mystery. I can't think of anything more appropriate to happen at this stage in the quote-unquote golden age of television, where you have an entire generation of filmmakers and storytellers basically creating incredible work, many of whom were inspired by the original Twin Peaks back in 1990, 1991. I think it's very fitting that a master storyteller and a master filmmaker like David Lynch would come back and say, hey, by the way, I still got it, and show them all how it's done, because I think it's safe to say after what I just saw, this is now my favorite show on TV. I love The Leftovers. I love Fargo. Those are great shows that I will continue to follow and enjoy for the remainder of their 3rd season. But goddamn, Twin Peaks, this is going to be an event. And we've got 16 more episodes to look forward to. I mean, David Lynch is doing 18 episodes, each of which he's directing. If you think about it, that's like that much content is almost like his entire previous library all added together. And here he is in his 70s giving us this enormous body of work. So it's just going to be an absolute delight picking over every little detail and analyzing it and discussing it, because David Lynch does not follow conventional, like logical narrative storytelling. His movies and his TV shows have oftentimes what like the logic of a dream, or it's the logic of emotions. If you try to do like A to B to C, it doesn't always make perfect sense. If you ask him what his movies are about, I mean, famously, when someone asked him what Wild at Heart was about, he said, oh, it's about 2 hours and 15 minutes. He does not give anybody anything to work with because he wants everybody to bring their own experiences and points of view and individual perspectives to the story. Because when you have stories that are just open to interpretation and this dreamlike, it's going to allow an infinite range of reactions. So while typically my TV reactions and reviews, I do like really hardcore, like play-by-play like synopsis of all the plot details, I'm going to do a lot less of that this time around because I feel like it'd be a huge disservice to the episodes for me to try and lock in place my own interpretation of what went down. But I think instead, I'm just going to talk about impressions and specific details that made me so riveted because, man, I found myself at times struggling even to take notes because I was completely getting sucked in. And I also was just feeling these overwhelming waves of relief because my biggest fear going into this was that the first episode would begin and I would just be crushingly disappointed and just be wounded that one of my heroes was going to essentially be humiliated over the course of the summer. Now, I think there's a very, very good chance that David Lynch might prove over the course of the summer that he's capable of doing his best work to date. Because there's something about the confines of serialized storytelling and TV that I think helps give David Lynch some structure. I mean, if I were to criticize his movies in any way, shape, or form, I think sometimes he can go so deep down the rabbit hole that he loses sight of what the movie was about in the first place, which is, maybe it's not a criticism, because it's exactly what he set out to do, so he's very successful at that. But for someone who likes narrative, I like the marriage of the TV world and Mark Frost's brilliant screenwriting with David Lynch's surrealistic nightmares and beautiful images he likes to put. I think it's a perfect harmony of two different narrative sensibilities coming together to create this unique world. But enough yammering at this point. Let's dig into what made these two episodes so special. And obviously, I'm going to be talking about spoilers. So if you haven't seen these yet, please go watch Twin Peaks because, well, first and foremost, watch Twin Peaks Season 1, watch Twin Peaks Season 2, and watch Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me. But maybe you don't have to, but it'll definitely add enormously to your enjoyment. And also, watch all of his movies as well. Start with Eraserhead. Actually, start with his short films. I mean, his short films like Alphabet and things like that are phenomenal. So yeah, just watch everything David Lynch has ever done, and then watch Twin Peaks. Now, let's dig in. So as I mentioned earlier, I don't consider myself an expert on Twin Peaks. I mean, when I was 14, when Twin Peaks first came out, I didn't even follow it. I was aware of the phenomenon. It was impossible not to be. I mean, Rolling Stone had these astonishing covers with all these beautiful women. Like, whoa, Twin Peaks, this is an event. I just was not watching TV at that time at all. It was a very different time, and I was basically reading comics and playing Nintendo and that sort of thing. It passed me by. But I rediscovered Twin Peaks in the late 90s on VHS and then on DVD as it kind of got reintroduced to the world. But there's a chance that I might be a little foggy on some of the really, really specific key details of Season 2, because I saw Season 2 on DVD probably 15 years ago, and I watched some highlight videos on YouTube and that sort of thing, which gave me a bit of a refresher. But if I perhaps flub some of the details that relate to what we saw tonight, I apologize in advance. I think I have enough of an understanding of Season 2 where I won't completely confuse or distort what we saw tonight, because obviously this show is, in a lot of ways, it's picking up right where the previous season left off 25 years ago, which is very satisfying. But also, like I said, his stories do not follow strict narrative sense. So sometimes when you try to give a summary, you can distort what someone else's impressions might be. My first key takeaway from tonight is that David Lynch has rediscovered his love of beautiful imagery. I don't think there's a person alive who knows how to create beautiful imagery the way he does, especially beautiful imagery that has a hint of danger and eroticism. It's like he took the best elements of film noir and surrealism and threw them together, and it's just basically from Blue Velvet on, it's some of the most striking, stylish imagery I've ever seen. But in Inland Empire, he essentially abandoned a lot of that. It was very like lo-fi and very grainy and very digital. But man, the Twin Peaks episode 1 and 2 of Season 3 is stunningly beautiful, whether it's a shot going down a dirt road through the woods at night, or a shot of Midtown Manhattan, or just the waterfalls of Twin Peaks. So every single shot, you're just like, oh, it's like your eyes are having little orgasms watching it. So that, first and foremost, which is a huge relief to see that David Lynch is reminding us that he is one of the best photographers and has one of the best eyes of any person on the planet. So while in episode 2, it was a ton of fun seeing a lot of familiar faces like Deputy Hawk, who I love, and Margaret with her talking log and things like that. Like, we see a lot of familiar faces from the police station and at the local bar, the Bang Bang Bar. Like, that very much feels like almost like a college reunion or high school reunion, seeing all these familiar faces again. So that's an incredible kind of homecoming for the viewer if you love these characters. These first 2 episodes introduced a ton of new characters as well. And what I found most fascinating, particularly in the first episode, are these scenes in New York where there's this giant glass cube in this room, and it's almost like an art installation piece / science experiment. It's got a window out into Midtown Manhattan, but it almost looks like it's harnessing or capturing energy or waiting for something, and the way the show keeps cutting back to it. It's almost like, what's going to happen? Is it going to do something? Is it something going to appear? What's going to happen? And this young man has been hired by an eccentric billionaire to just watch it. What I love is that it has a hint of mystery, but I just found myself laughing because it was just so weird and so unusual. And you also have Michael Bisping as a security guard downstairs. For those of you who don't know, Michael Bisping is currently the middleweight champion of the UFC, seasoned pro in mixed martial arts, but I guess he's venturing into the world of TV. But no lines, but he is guarding this building, and this beautiful girl keeps trying to get in and find out what's happening. And finally we get what is one of the most intensely erotic scenes that I have ever seen in a TV show, where they say, hey, you want to make out? And they start fooling around, and they start taking their clothes off. And now it was Twin Peaks in the original series did not have nudity. Twin Peaks Firewalk with Me did, and that also had some really, really intensely wild erotic scenes where they go out to clubs and bars and that sort of thing. But here we have this great makeout scene when we get one of the all-time great David Lynch nightmare scenes. It reminded me a lot of the atmosphere in Lost Highway, where this like apparition or this like phantom-like creature appears inside the box, goes completely insane, finally breaks out and just mangles these two people. And what I love in David Lynch is that periodically throughout his films and shows, he has these references to like a presence or a force or like an evil like spirit of menace, whether it's out in the woods near Twin Peaks or some of the antagonists in Lost Highway, or just some like I feel like you had Twin Peaks, Lost Highway, and Mulholland Drive all employ this evil spirit in a way that I find to be some of David Lynch's finest moments on screen. And here we get yet another variation on that. So I was thrilled to have this totally bewildering, confusing, terrifying, arousing scene. It's like, yes, David Lynch is fucking back. I'm in. But as weird and bizarre as Twin Peaks is known to be, at its core, Twin Peaks always has been faithful to the idea of being a police procedural. These are cop shows. These are murder mysteries. And we do get this interesting murder mystery that takes place in South Dakota, where this woman is found with her head missing from her body and also like a giant like rotten hole in her eye where her eye used to be. They're not even sure if the body matches the head. And the local principal has been screwing her, and they suspect him of murdering her, and his wife's been screwing his lawyer. It's this great little narrative. I'm not sure how it's going to tie back into the main narrative, and who knows what the main narrative is even going to be. But as we see over the course of these first two episodes, it seems like the real main narrative for now is how will Agent Cooper get back into his body, because Agent Cooper appears to be trapped in that, for lack of a better expression, like that red velvet curtain room where he's had all those mysterious conversations and dreams about Laura Palmer in the past. For those who remember, at the end of season 2, but Cooper essentially got trapped in this world as his body got possessed by Bob. He has that great classic shot of him looking at himself in the mirror and smashing his head into it and losing his mind. But it appears as if he has a doppelganger spirit that is temporarily embodying or taking over his body, and he's like this great roughneck, hardcore criminal living in the underworld of the Midwest. He reminds me a lot of Dennis Hopper's character in Blue Velvet or Willem Dafoe's character in Wild at Heart. You know, slick back hair and like leather, a lot of leather and boots, and just mean as a snake and filled with danger and hanging out with beautiful women and involved in all sorts of crime. Lynch is great at capturing those kind of outlaw personalities, and right now Dale Cooper is very much in that mode. But what's fascinating is Kyle MacLachlan is just, he's like the sweetest, nicest human being I've ever seen in most of David Lynch's work, whether it's Blue Velvet or whether it was in Twin Peaks. I mean, he's even a little bit like that as Paul Atreides in Dune. But we get to see Kyle kind of stretch his acting muscles as he plays his part really, really convincingly. And he's got these cohorts who are conspiring against him. But Cooper is hanging out in the Red Room talking to the man with one arm, and then we also see that his missing arm has become like a tree, keeps talking to him about how he's going to try and get out, and like the talking arm also has the doppelganger, and he also has this great conversation with Laura Palmer. It's a lot of mysterious stuff because in this world everybody speaks in this kind of clipped reverse lingo. Even Laura Palmer's blinks are like done in reverse, and they're really cool and eerie looking. But in essence, we learn that Cooper's doppelganger must come back before he can go out. And we have this great moment where he parts the curtain and he's looking and he's seeing himself drive down a highway when like the arm tree doppelganger thing freaks out and he falls to the floor. He ends up landing on that glass cube in Manhattan, and he briefly floats around and is kind of doing his thing in there while the couple is downstairs before they get shredded. And then does this crazy thing where it kind of goes back and forth, and then he's gone before they return. So they missed that whole opportunity to see Agent Cooper floating around. So who the hell knows what's going to happen with him? But it seems as if he's trying to get back to his body, and I imagine that'll happen. But we get all sorts of great cameos by people that we know and love from the previous season, like Ray Wise. He appears in the Red Room and tells Agent Cooper to find Laura. And obviously just getting to see the original Laura Palmer back was really, really cool as well. So yeah, the gang's all here, but we also have Jennifer Jason Leigh, and we've got Ashley Judd, and we've got all these newcomers who are fleshing out the cast. So killer cast, incredible music. Episode 2 ends with some of the best music in the history of Twin Peaks. I mean, Twin Peaks, the score is by Angelo Badalamenti, who's one of the most extraordinary composers ever to work in film or television, does extraordinary work. But episode 2 draws to a close with this really, really cool, edgy, interesting band playing as some of the characters from the previous seasons are all hanging out and watching each other. And I don't know if Badalamenti is involved in this season or not. I don't think he is. I think he's 80 years old now and basically in a state of semi-retirement. But this music definitely lives up to some of the killer music that he did in season 1 and 2. If I had one grievance, it would be that some of the delicious, idiosyncratic, small-town charm from season 1 and 2, we have not seen a whole hell of a lot of yet. I mean, we very well might get to that point where we get a bunch of that. But man, these first 2 episodes were pretty grim, pretty dark. There's one reference to Coffee and Pie with Deputy Hawk as he's going out into the woods. But otherwise, most of the smiles and the glee and the fun we have not encountered yet. But I have a feeling some of that's going to be coming our way because David Lynch in person is still one of the most delightfully warm and open people imaginable. He's like lit from within. He's achingly polite and sweet and has very little foul language. He's Midwestern charm all the way, combined with this astonishing imagination. If you are a fan of television or if you're a fan of film, it's a rare special moment and a privilege to have an entire summer devoted to David Lynch and his wild imagination. I mean, 18 hours of David Lynch, and at this level of quality, it's better than anything I could have possibly hoped for. I guess I've been living in denial that this actually might be good because I was just so afraid of being disappointed. But now I'm ready just to relax and enjoy the show. And yeah, I hope everybody will jump on board. And if people don't like it, I totally understand. It's not traditional narrative storytelling. But if you open yourself up to his rhythms and if you surrender to this unique atmosphere and style of storytelling, I think you'll find it really, really rewarding. And yeah, if you like this, check out his other work because it's some of the most extraordinary filmmaking of the last quarter century or 30 years. So yeah, I'm a very happy viewer. Couldn't be more excited about what the future might hold for us. And I'll be back at you guys next Sunday to review episode 3. But now I got a little leftovers to watch and I got some other work to catch up on. So I'm going to skedaddle. But thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate it. Please consider giving me a subscribe and I'll talk to y'all soon.